Hello everybody, good afternoon. Thursday afternoon, second week of COP, almost there for many of us, if not the negotiators, and it's the last day I know at the Capacity Building Hub, and huge congratulations to our friends at the PCCB here. Put your hand up if you're tired and want to go home. Have you had enough of COP? Let's see, show of hands here. Right, let's get a bit of energy going in the room before we start. So I'd like everybody to stand up, please, if you're able. And Vikas, you're already doing that one. You can play too, Clementine. Thank you very much. Okay, let's see who's been here the longest. So sit down if you arrived this week, so from Monday onwards. Okay. Sit down if you arrived at the weekend on Saturday or Sunday. Oh, a few more. Okay, sit down if you arrived on Finance Day, that was Thursday or Friday last week. Okay. Sit down if you arrived on Wednesday last week, the 13th. Sorry, Vikas, we were on the same flight, so you can't cheat on that one. Sit down if you arrived on Tuesday last week. It's getting close, okay. Sit down if you arrived on opening day on Monday the 11th last week. Wow, okay, we're going back. Sit down if you arrived on Sunday the 10th. Forgot. Oh, it's a standoff here. Okay, when did you arrive? Saturday night, when did you arrive? Friday, we have a winner, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm delighted to give you your prize. You didn't know this was a competition? This is a book on sustainable finance I highly recommend, because I wrote it, so there we go. Congratulations. That's got nothing to do with the session today, but I had one copy left and I didn't want to take it home in my bag, so I'm paying it forward. Good, so now hopefully that we've got everybody sort of woken up with a little bit of energy, and I really do appreciate everybody coming and spending part of your Thursday afternoon with us. Welcome to the Capacity Building Hub, and welcome to this event led by the Global Capacity Building Coalition. We're looking at, the event will focus on capacity building for the finance sector and how we can align the activities, the decisions, and financing of our sector with sustainability policy and goals, including but not only limited to the financing of more ambitious NDCs and national action plans, which I know have been a focus at COP and in this room in particular. So here's what we'll be doing over the next sort of, 55 minutes or so. So after I've briefly set the scene and told you a little bit about the GCBC, we were a new body, we were announced at COP last year. We've really been active for maybe the last sort of 3 months or so you may not have heard of us. There's 3 parts to today's agenda. Firstly, we're going to hear from representatives of 2 GCBC member organisations, both experts in capacity building in its various forms. And by capacity building, we mean, and we encompass, but things such as technical assistance, education and training of all types, peer-to-peer networks for organisations and individuals, action learning, and much, much more. So I'll introduce Guli from the NDC Partnership and Vikas from ACCA in just about 5 minutes. Then we'll walk you through the beta version of the GCBC's Global Capacity Building Platform for Climate Finance, our first deliverable, launched at New York Climate Week about 8 weeks ago. Now, that I'm losing track of time, may have been 8 weeks ago, could have been 8 years ago, who knows. And then finally, my colleague Clementine will lead an interactive session to get your feedback on the platform, suggestions how it could be developed further, and your insights on capacity building to further inform our plans and priorities for 2025 and beyond. So I hope you'll go away with some practical ideas and insights as to how effective, impactful capacity building can help unlock climate finance. And Clementine and I will go away and reflect on your constructive feedback on the GCBC and in particular on the beta version of our capacity building platform. So let's get started. Let me briefly introduce you to the Global Capacity Building Coalition, the GCBC. So we were announced just over a year ago now at COP28, and we come from a recommendation by the G20 Sustainable Finance Working Group that a body like this be established to convene the global capacity building ecosystem for private sector climate finance. We're an unprecedented global alliance of UN agencies, multilateral development banks, private sector finance bodies like GFANs, professional associations, educators and others. Together, our members encompass over 5,000 public and private financial institutions, 160 financial centres and exchanges, and millions of finance professionals in almost every country in the world. I'm supposed to say at this point you can see our current members on the slide, but this is well out of date. We add new members literally every week. And our most recent members are mainstreaming climate and financial institutions, and I'm very pleased to announce the NDC partnership who are here with us today as well. But capacity building is not the goal in itself, it's the means to an end. So we're trying to build institutional capabilities and individuals' expertise and skills, individuals' competence to unlock climate finance. That's the end goal, capacity building to unlock, to mobilize climate finance. To support policy objectives such as the new collective quantified goal, to support the financing of more ambitious NDCs, to support the financing of NAPs, and other global, regional and national sustainability priorities too. Now, the GCBC itself will not do capacity building. We're not another capacity building body that will do capacity building. Our role is twofold. Firstly, to convene the global capacity building ecosystem for private sector climate finance and catalyse where we can and where needed regional, national and sectoral capacity building ecosystems too. And secondly, we want to maximise the accessibility, the inclusivity and the provision of technical assistance, knowledge sharing, education, training and research. The issue is not that there is a lack of capacity building material out there. The issue that finance professionals and financial institutions in emerging markets report to us and to our colleagues and to our members is that there's too much of it, some of it's hard to access, it's very hard to navigate, we don't know what's high quality and what's relevant. We're trying to solve for that problem. One of the ways we're solving for that is through a global online platform for climate finance capacity building, and that's one of the things we're going to look at and ask for your feedback on today. So you see we've got our sort of 3 priorities there. But the platform is just a start, it's just the first deliverable. If a website was the only solution we needed to solve a global capacity building challenge, we'd have solved this a long time ago. There are plenty of websites out there. So our aim is to be both high-tech and high-touch, to identify and help scale up innovative and impactful capacity building activities, programs and providers wherever we find them. So we'll continue to grow the GCBC, we'll continue to be very active in international events and fora like this one and regional equivalents. So building the business case for and promoting the importance of capacity building as one of the key activities needed to mobilize the climate finance required, especially in emerging markets and developing economies. And that's the $2.4 trillion per annum estimated to be required by 2030. And that's one of the figures that's certainly been doing the rounds over the past 2 weeks. And trying to identify what really works when it comes to capacity building. What are the common features that distinguish impactful capacity building activities, programs and organizations? And by impactful, we mean capacity building that's not just good within itself, but actually mobilizes substantial amounts of climate finance. And as and when we identify those, we can then help through some of our funding members, the multilateral development banks and so on, help scale up these programs so they're delivered on a wider regional or global scale and hopefully accelerate the mobilization of finance in support of climate and wider sustainability goals. And that whole idea of what works is what we're going to look at first of all. I'm delighted we'll be invited by 2 super experts to help me do that. So Guli and Vikas, if you'd like to come to the stage, please. That would take all of our time this afternoon even to summarize their CVs, and you want to hear from them rather than me. You've had enough of me already. I've had enough of me already. So let me simply welcome Guli Sabahi, who is the Senior Climate Finance Advisor at the NDC Partnership. If you don't know, the NDC Partnership is an amazing organization that helps countries accelerate NDC implementation, and I think highly relevant to our topic today, they help mobilize finance in support of this. Guli's as your background, I think you're an engineer and a lawyer, I think you were telling me the other day, and you've got a background in energy too, so you must have a lot of energy to do all of that, so if we can keep the energy going, that would be fantastic. And Vikas Agarwal is the Head of Public Affairs for ACCA, the Global Accounting and Education Body. He's also had a spell with the UK government, including the Foreign Office. And Vikas, I want to check your biography, you were also at one time an engineer, I understand too. So I think we look forward to you and Guli engineering some great capacity building solutions for us this afternoon. So, Guli, I'm going to turn to you first, and while you answer this question, I will come and sit down next to you. And this is, I guess, the key what works question. So let me ask you, what works?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So maybe I'll just step back before I comment on what works. NDC Partnership is a global coalition that has over 230 members, including developing countries, developed countries, UN agencies, MDBs, and other important stakeholders who come together to support developing countries' efforts to achieve their NDC targets as well as SDG targets and goals. So strengthening country capacity is core to our work. Support countries to develop internal institutional capacity to be able to set and drive their own strategic direction. That's at the core of the work that we do. We receive a lot of requests on capacity building. I just wanted to mention what type of requests we get from countries. So most of them relate to the technical capacity, which we try to address through either hiring specialists or doing trainings for the existing teams to build long-term institutional capacity. There is a lot of need coming on investments and finance-related issues, as well as gender equality and how do you address that topic in the NDCs, disaster risk reduction, subnational engagement, as well as private sector engagement. We have addressed about 60% of those requests. 40% still remain unsupported, and we hope for working also with you all and with the private sector and our partners and members, we can really help countries address their existing capacity building requests. In terms of what has worked, one of the things that we do, we deploy embedded advisors in the Ministries of Environment and Ministries of Finance, who are our focal points. So those advisors really bring both short-term kind of capacity as well as strengthen the long-term capacity of countries. During COVID, we had a program where we were able to deploy 51 advisors in 31 countries, as well as African Union Commission, with the support of our 13 partners. We also deployed finance advisors through CFAN initiative. Some of you may have heard Climate Finance Access Network. That's number one. Number two, we also deploy in all the countries where we're present facilitators, one or two people on the ground who help with coordinating partnerships work and also help with the intergovernmental coordination. And we had our regional meetings with the countries, and the facilitators on the ground is always the support that they very much appreciate. So if that also something that I think really has worked well. And I also wanted to mention one other approach. For the last round of NDCs, and now we're looking into the upcoming round of NDCs, we had a initiative called CAP, and then it's now called Global Call, which is targeted fast-track support to countries to enhance their NDCs. And a big part of it was around preparation, for the NDCs, building the capacity. And we were able to mobilize a lot of that capacity development support. That 60% that I mentioned, 30% of it almost was through that targeted fast-track support program that we were able to mobilize. So I think those are some of the examples from our work that I will mention, and we can then discuss further.
Some great examples there. Thanks for sharing those. And Vikas, a similar question to you from the ACCA perspective, particularly sort of ACCA's role in supporting the development of if not more than at least almost sort of 1 million finance professionals. And I know they're not only accountants as well. That's what some of the people don't know. So what really works when it comes to sort of helping build the capacity of institutions and the capabilities, competence of individuals?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So just a bit of background about ACCA. We're a professional accountancy body, so we train finance and accounting professionals. You might think, well, hold on a second, what does that have to do with anything? Well, the reality is that accounting professionals are individuals that will be embedded in organizations and will help be part of that transformation. In terms of how we operate, I think it's on, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Our body is over 100 years old. So we've been working around the world for a very, very long time. And that isn't just projecting outwards. That is about embedding ourselves in every country around the world. We have over 750,000 members and students across 180 countries. And that means that we feed out to everywhere equally. Somebody sitting an exam in London will be doing the same exam sat in Beijing, in Bangkok, in Toronto, wherever they might be in the world. And the reason that's important is because you need to ensure this equitable transfer of knowledge, right? That everybody moves in the same fashion. In terms of our organization itself, we are governed globally. We have a global council of members. These are people that we have trained over the years that have come back to us and are helping the organization run to ensure that we are doing this equitably around the world, that we are reflective of and responsive to the differences in different parts of the world, the local context that is necessary. And that's really important. That local context for education is incredibly important. You cannot expect every country to operate in exactly the same way, to learn in the same way, to need the same sort of things. So how we're doing this, right, is taking our knowledge and putting it into local context, often into local language for our constituents. We have built a number of learning products over the past sort of 5-10 years. We've recognized that the only way they're going to be effective in making a change is by translating them. So we have a sustainable finance certificate that is now in Arabic and in Spanish and in Mandarin, I believe correctly, and same with similar other products. And that's important because if we're trying to achieve this sort of global change, this global capacity building, we have to make it as frictionless as possible. Now, Simon already said it. This is a means to an end. The accounting profession is a means to an end. It is about helping businesses and societies to move in the right direction. It's about business transformation. It's about sustainability. It's about transparency and ethics. Our members, they're not just there to do corporate reporting, financial reporting. That's a big part of it, and I'll come back to that a bit later on. But they are there to actually help SMEs transform. They're there to help, society. And I should say that our members don't just work in business. They work in charities. They work in the public sector. They work in the development organizations. We have a number of members that work in UN Women, for example, and in the Green Climate Fund in Korea, as I learned recently. So they do get about, and they're in really, really important roles. But because they have that sort of center of knowledge, center of excellence, the constant communication, that sort of wraparound from our organization for them, and we do value our members incredibly highly, especially, they get to in really important roles, and they play really important roles. We want to ensure that they have the tools and the knowledge, and the sort of that capacity to do what we expect them to do, which is to deliver public value, to contribute to sustainable economies. So that's really our approach.
And so I'm struck as you describe ACCA there, and this is my term rather than yours. I think you're describing a global community of practice, but it is bringing together a very wide range of professionals geographically, but also in terms of a wide range of sectors too, particularly the private sector and the public sector. I know this is something you're very keen on. It's something we've been discussing, and we've been discussing with other colleagues here sort of at COP, is in terms of unlocking climate finance, how important is it to bring the public and private sort of finance sectors, and in fact the public sector more broadly, and the private sectors together, and how can we actually do that?
That's a billion-dollar question, right? But it's a very important one, because I think what we're trying to do right now hasn't been done before. So if you think about it, we are at the time where countries need to prepare their next round of NDCs, and they're expected to be the economic blueprints, not just for climate action, but for sustainable development of countries, that they would transform the economies, that they would provide for those just transition sectoral pathways, and that they ultimately need to mobilize finance to implement those NDCs. And a lot of that finance will have to come from private sector just because of the sheer size of the requirements, but the public sector financing plays a very important role. in helping mobilize that private capital. So when we talk about, I think, the investments that are needed, we're talking about different types of investments, and our country teams, they may not speak the finance language, or understand the investment criteria or requirements that the private sector has. And also on the private sector side, I think there's a lot of learning that needs to be done in terms of what is NDC, what are the policies, and so I think if we want to foster collective action, we do need to start thinking about the collective mindset. We need to bring the stakeholders together in the same room so that they learn together from each other, that they address the challenges and think about the solutions together. I think the best way to learn it is learning on the job. And I wonder how can we have the frameworks for kind of a continuous, meaningful engagement, whether it's, for example, for the private sector engagement roundtables, let's say, in the processes for the development of NDCs with specific entry points. And also some of the delivery approaches that we had, this embedded advisory support, the global call with fast track support to countries. How can we extend those programs for this next round of NDCs? I think that would be very important. The other thing that's important, I think, when you think about the solution, the challenge that we have, right? We also need leaders in all of the institutions, leaders at different levels, who have a multidisciplinary understanding of the issues involved, right? Because we need to understand kind of microeconomic, geopolitical, business, commercial, financial, technical, legal. You don't need to be an expert, but you need to kind of have a really good understanding and how to connect the dots and who should be at the table, so that the discussions and capacity development is done in a very guided way, and the conversations don't get out of control kind of on day one, but we are moving towards the common objective, and we're progressing on that, and we're having those right conversations with the right stakeholders in the room. So how to achieve that between now and when we have to deliver those NDCs 3.0, I think is something that I'm personally excited about. We are already working on this, so look forward to working and collaborating more with you all also.
Okay, and they're going to have to be very quick and impactful conversations, because we haven't got long to deliver the NDCs, have we? So, we're going to have to move very quickly on that. And speaking of moving quickly on conversations, we've come to our last question for both of you. So I'll ask you both the same question. Vikas, if you could maybe come first, I think. So, when it comes to capacity building, and clearly ACCA has a very global perspective, but is very well thought about in many emerging markets. Is there anything different we need to take into account when we're thinking about delivering capacity building? Are there different interventions and things, or actually should we treat this as a global issue and have a single global solution?
Yeah, I don't believe we should be treating everywhere equally. I mean, it doesn't work, right? It's not practical to do so. We do need global baselines, and I think the new sustainability standards that were launched at COP last year, that sets that sort of global baseline for what companies, what investors, what is expected of companies, and what investors are looking for in order to park that money in good opportunities, in future risk management, in that climate transition, that journey. That's really important. But how we do that on a localized basis makes a huge difference, right? Who you engage with, the organizations you engage with. I think, Julie, to your point about explaining what the NDCs are, I think the notion that we could explain to every small and medium business, for example, around the world, what the NDC means for them is for the birds, frankly. We depend, I think, as a capacity building ecosystem on multipliers. I think the GCBC is the sort of very much at the top of the tree of that, of bringing the multipliers together, the interested parties to share their knowledge and to get the message out. Our members, where they work with businesses, they will have multiple clients. If we can impart our knowledge on them, then they can spread it across a wider range of businesses and individuals. In terms of the local context, it's about thinking what works for that business. When we're talking about access to finance, we might not be talking about the multinational investors. We might be talking about credit unions. We might be talking about microfinanciers. So how exactly is it we're going to engage with them to get the message out about sustainable finance, climate finance, removing that friction as we sort of discussed. Bringing it back to ACCA, we are constantly developing new material in different formats. Might sound simplistic, but like videos and toolkits, things that we know are going to be useful to businesses and to individuals, the ones that need the most guidance and the most support. We try and put it in a way that will help them. Plain English, no sort of legalese and no policy talk. It's all about, what does this mean for me? How do I do it? How do I copy and paste this and stick it into my plans and into my reports? That's what we're trying to do to facilitate that sort of smooth transition. It's not easy. I'm not going to pretend that this is going to happen overnight. I don't think anyone thinks it's going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. I mean, we do all of our stuff to drive those sustainable economies, but we have to try and get it out there as well. And in a very crowded environment, especially when you've got other pressing matters, inflation, cost of living, actual climate catastrophes happening in front of us that we need to deal with the immediate effects of, there are challenges to get to where we need to get to. But we keep pushing ahead. We work with our partners. We work with local and national governments. We work with the UN and other development bodies. We depend actually on organisations like the NDCP who can communicate the sort of the more technical bits, because they're specialists in it. Our members will then pick that up and they will run with it, and they'll try and translate that into business language. That's really what's going to bring it to a local audience.
So, Guli, if I can give you the last word and the similar sort of question. So perhaps you'd like to pick on some of the points that sort of Vikas drew out there. So what do we need to take into account from an emerging and developing economy perspective when we're thinking about capacity building that can be impactful and work?
I think we should think about it as a two-way process. There's a lot of, because I think the way that capacity development has been done is kind of us, international experts coming and providing capacity development, or, those fly-in, fly-out consultants. And that's really kind of not working. So we do need to build long-term capacity, but there's also a lot of learning that can be gained from those who are on the field, and they bring that local context, and I heard even this morning that developing countries' capacity is just not as strong, and I said, well, we have excellent developing country focal points who can speak on any finance topic, and they can follow, and so that capacity is increasing, and we need to recognize that, and we need to, I think, ensure that we are really moving it to the next level. So that would be my suggestion. And I'm hoping that we reach the point that we're all speaking common language. And I think this is so important to your point as well. We have, I just will mention very quickly, 2 tools right now where we try to create some of that common language around NDC's development and also NDC's implementation. There are 2 tools on our website. One is called NDC 3.0 Navigator, and that's for the development of NDCs, and for the implementation of NDCs, there is a framework that we just launched with GCF. It's called Climate Investment Planning and Mobilization Framework, and it takes you through the processes of how you would, as a country, implement your NDCs. Where do you engage with the private sector? What are the terms of art, and what are the different processes involved? So that when we're discussing, we kind of talking about, where we understand each other better, and I think that will help us move along faster and more effectively.
Well, common language is key to this. I'm glad we were all speaking sort of common language on the panel here, and I think there's definitely a commonality amongst the GCBC members in terms of the importance of capacity building for the private sector, but increasingly as well, I think there's a common approach developing to capacity building that brings together the public sector and the private sector and the various parts of the public sector and the private sector. And I hope that's something that when we reconvene at the capacity building hub in Brazil in a year's time, will actually have put some flesh to that. But thank you, Gulli and Vikas for sharing your expertise, some wonderful insights and takeaways, and the key. And hopefully that got us all thinking a bit about capacity building and how we do that. And so I'd now like to move to the next part of our session, which is to present the beta version of our global capacity building platform. You're very welcome to stay on the comfortable chairs if you want to snooze while I do this, but it's up to you. Yes. Okay. So if you would like to, if you click on the QR code on the screen or on the web address, you will be able to bring up the live version of the website. I'll give you all a moment while you do that. This bit always makes me feel like a rock star because people seem to be taking pictures of me, but actually I'm just getting in the way of you taking a picture of a QR code. I'll come back to it. And if it's not working for you, you should be able to see it on the screen on the left, which I need my glasses to see. So has everybody who wants it managed to find it on their phone? You've got a reasonable picture? Great. So this is the beta version of the Global Capacity Building Coalition's platform. We launched this about 8 weeks ago in New York, so it is a beta version. It's not the final version, it's our first attempt at this. And one of the aims of this session is to get your feedback on things you like, things you don't like about it. Now, the first thing to notice, hopefully when you come to the platform, is that everything is freely available to anybody who wants to use it. So the target audience is financial professionals, financial institutions in emerging markets and developing economies, but anybody, anywhere in the world can use it too, and we certainly know it's valuable to educators and trainers, to public sector officials, regulators, ministries, and to finance professionals in developed markets as well. So there's no paywall, you don't have to give us your email address or anything to log in, you just come in and use what's here. And also as well, if I go over here, you can see the website is available. I can't see if it's working on the screen now, I'll assume it is. It's available in all 6 UN languages, plus Indonesian and Portuguese, looking ahead to, in fact, Brazilian Portuguese, looking ahead to this time next year. And one of the areas we'd like your feedback on is what other languages would you like the platform to be available in? Now, everybody always then says, I'd like it in my language, in which case, please leave your email address and we'll ask you to translate it for us later. Now, there are 3 main parts to the platform at the moment. We have a knowledge hub, which contains resources like guidance, frameworks, toolkits, reports, divided into a range of topic areas, supplied by the members of the Global Capacity Coalition. We have a library of case studies, and we have a calendar of events and live learning opportunities. Coming soon in the new year will be e-learning and other forms of education and training courses and programs. So if we just have a look at each section in a bit more detail. We click on the Knowledge Hub. It's not my computer. Here it is working. Good. So in the Knowledge Hub, this is where we're showcasing climate finance resources that we hope will be of practical assistance to financial institutions and finance professionals in emerging markets and more widely too. So as I mentioned, things like toolkits, frameworks and guidance and so on, but not just those static resources, increasingly recordings of events and webinars, podcasts and similar too, because if you're a busy finance professional, you probably don't have much time or interest in reading a very technical 200-page report about something, but if there's a 20-minute introductory video or webcast or podcast on that gives you the key takeaways, that might be something you want to see. Now, as we're gathering a very wide range of resources here from our members, and so we're building this every day, there's I'm interested in I'm interested in thinking about just transition, and let's choose Central Asia, seeing as that's where we are. Let's see what we come up with. Here we go. So here we go. So here's a series of resources here. So if I can scroll down to see what we've got. So you'll see it's come up with a variety of resources that might be useful to me if I'm interested in just transition as a banker from Central Asia. And in fact, if I look at the first one here, I can flick over the tile, Just let me take it up the screen so it's a bit easy for everybody to see. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, I can just get a quick bit of metadata about it to see if that may be the kind of thing I'm interested in. And I can go through to the resource itself. Here we go. So I can download the underlying resource. I've got a quick summary of what it is. There's sort of resources that sort of link to this. So this could be, I can't see exactly what this is here on my screen. This could be the podcast or the webcast that introduces it. I don't want to be going off to some external sort of websites while we're talking here. So very quick and easy to get there. And at every point on the site, you can give anonymous feedback. So if this is useful to you, just tell us, yes, it is. Or if you want to, you can give us sort of more structured feedback. Why was it useful? Why was it not useful? Or you can suggest other resources. And a bit like Netflix, if you like this one, here's some other resources that might sort of help you later. So that's the knowledge hub. I think we've probably all seen things like that before. My favorite part of the platform is the library of case studies. So the idea behind the case studies, this is something that we know from our research that finance professionals find particularly useful. You know, these are examples of innovative financing transactions that have actually worked. So some will be blended finance, mixtures of public and private finance. Some will be sort of new private financial instruments. We've got about 30 on here at the moment. We'll have another 30 by the end of the year. And I say we're kind of adding to it sort of as we go along. And I really like the interface our team have put together here for this, where you've got a nice map. But you can search by type of case study. So over here we have the green is financing and deploying capital. The pink is project pipeline development, which we know is an area that lots of finance professionals want more detail in, because we're all struggling. You know, if you go to lots of sessions at COP or sessions about climate finance, you have project developers saying we can't get finance, and financiers saying we can't find the investable projects, and somehow we can't bring those two together. So here's some examples where that's worked. And then sort of the blue is sort of transition and climate strategies. But let's choose, I think probably the closest to where we are in Baku would be over here. So there's 3 in sort of Central Asia, and if I just choose the first one, so I think from memory this is an example of, I think this is sort of Masdar in the UAE, and how they sort of helped to fund what was at the time Central Asia's largest sort of wind farm in Uzbekistan. So not too far away, not too far away from here. And similar to the Knowledge Hub, there's a summary. There's some key takeaways. So if you don't want to read the whole thing, you don't have to. You can read that in your own language. But then you can visit the underlying case study itself here, and then going on in a similar way to the Knowledge Hub, you can give us anonymous feedback if you think this is particularly useful to you, or you can suggest other resources as well. And then the final sort of part of the beta version of the platform is the calendar of events and live learning opportunities. So, you see at the top, here we go. Here's where, funnily enough, this is what we're at the moment, introducing the GCBC platform, a new resource for climate finance capacity building. And as we build this calendar out to have more and more online, hybrid, and in-person events delivered by ourselves and our partners, the idea will be this becomes a one-stop sort of shop for not just the big global events like COP and things that people hear of, but hopefully the events that happen in country by our partners that are genuinely the impactful capacity building events, but that would benefit from getting a wider regional or global audience, and this will be built out over time. And as I mentioned, coming soon in the new year also, we will have we'll be adding another page which will have a variety of sort of foundation e-learning programs, academic programs, and professional certifications too, probably coming in January or February. So that's the very brief tour of the platform. I can be less nervous now because I didn't have it pretty much worked well, which is always the challenge of doing these things live. But we want to get your feedback now as to really what you like about this and what you don't like about this. And so my colleague Clementine, who's the GCBC Senior Program Manager, is going to take us through an exercise. We're going to make you work a little bit to get that feedback from you. So Clementine, let me hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Simon, and hi everyone. As Simon said, I'm Clementine, Senior Program Manager at the GCBC. Thank you for making the time today. As Simon said, it's time to get your thoughts on it. So I'm going to present a Menti that I'm sure you'll all be familiar with because it was the last exercise. So I'm already putting up the Menti code for people to start scanning. I'm just going to explain maybe a little bit of the context. So as Simon said, what we are presenting to you is actually a beta version of our platform. So we are in a process of getting some feedback through different channels. We've done a number of webinars. We have a survey as well on the platform that I'll be sharing at the end. We've been conducting one-to-one interviews as well with potential target users. So if you're interested in telling us more about what you think, we'd be very happy to speak with you. There is, as Simon showed you briefly as well, some sort of inbuilt feedback that is in sort of functionality you can vote on the platform. But we also need sort of those in-person events to sort of try and get feedback from the community, and this is where we are today. So without further ado, so I'm just going to leave the QR code on the slide here for anyone that hasn't had the time to scan it from the other side. But I'm going to get started with the Menti. So if we go to the next slide, I'll start with our first question. So hopefully you'll have seen the platform or either on your phone or when Simon was sharing the screen. And just maybe to get us started, from what you've heard so far, what you've seen on your phone, how likely are you to recommend the GCBC platform to your colleagues? Right, so I can see we have a first few responses, which is great. So 4.3, that sounds pretty good. Probably, I mean, we're really conscious that we can improve further, but obviously that sounds like a pretty good start. People not completely disliking the idea, which is great. Okay.